Ancient map mysteries you never knew existed. The lines you trace with your finger across any map are lies, deliberate distortions of a reality that cartographers knew they could never truly capture. Yet they drew them anyway, embedding secrets that would outlive civilizations. Every ancient map is simultaneously a confession of ignorance and an act of supreme arrogance. A document that reveals not what the world is, but what the human mind desperately needs it to be. You live in a world where satellite imagery has stripped away the mystery of unexplored territories, where GPS coordinates can pinpoint your location to within 3 feet, where the phrase, "Here be dragons," has become a quaint historical curiosity. But the dragons were never in the unexplored regions. They were always in the explored ones, hidden in plain sight on maps that claimed to show you truth, while systematically obscuring it. The most terrifying revelation is not that ancient cartographers didn't know what lay beyond the edges of their world, but that they knew exactly what they were hiding within the borders they had already drawn. Consider this: every ancient map that has survived to reach your eyes has done so precisely because it was wrong in ways that served power, because it contained falsehoods that someone found useful enough to preserve. The accurate maps, the ones that showed the world as it truly was, those were burned, buried, or deliberately lost, because truth is the most dangerous cargo any civilization can carry. But before we begin, let us know in the comment sections where you are all listening in from. Section 1. The Piri Reis Antarctic Impossibility. You are looking at a map that should not exist. The Piri Reis map of 1513 shows the coastline of Antarctica with impossible accuracy. Not the Antarctica buried under miles of ice that you know today, but the rock formations beneath that ice, contours that would not be discovered by modern science until 1958, using seismic equipment and ground-penetrating radar. The Turkish Admiral Piri Reis compiled this map using 20 source maps, some of which he claimed dated back to the time of Alexander the Great, others allegedly drawn by Christopher Columbus himself. The mathematical precision haunts every geological survey team that has compared this medieval parchment to contemporary satellite data. The Piri Reis map depicts the Weddell Sea coastline with an accuracy that assumes knowledge of longitudinal calculations not officially developed until the 18th century. More disturbing still, it shows rivers flowing from the Antarctic interior to the sea, rivers that exist today only as subglacial water channels detected by modern ice-penetrating technology. You must confront the recursive nightmare embedded in this cartographic anomaly. Either ancient civilizations possessed surveying capabilities that surpassed those available to European explorers for centuries afterward, or they had access to information sources that have been systematically erased from historical record. The Ottoman Empire's naval archives, where Piri Reis claimed to have discovered his source materials, were conveniently destroyed in a fire in 1571, eliminating any possibility of verification. But the destruction feels too convenient, too precisely timed. When you examine the surviving fragments of Piri Reis's own writings, you discover his repeated references to maps drawn by peoples from the West and ancient charts that showed the world as it was in the time of the ice. These are not the words of a man fabricating evidence. These are the words of a man terrified by what he had discovered, A man who understood that the knowledge he was preserving contradicted everything his civilization believed about the progression of human understanding. The recursive horror deepens when you realize that the Piri-Reis map is not unique. Similar impossible cartographic knowledge appears in the Orontius-Phineus map of 1531, the Philippe Boitier map of 1754, and the Mercator map of 1569, all showing Antarctic geological features that should have been unknowable to their creators. Each mapmaker claimed to be copying from earlier sources, creating an infinite regression of impossible knowledge, a cartographic Ouroboros that devours its own explanations. The scientific community's response to these anomalies follows a predictable pattern of institutional denial. They dismiss the accuracies as coincidence, the geological correlations as pareidolia, the human tendency to perceive meaningful patterns in random data. But their explanations require more faith than the alternatives they reject. To accept the official narrative, you must believe that medieval cartographers accidentally achieved precision that eluded trained explorers for centuries, that they randomly drew coastlines that coincidentally matched geological features hidden beneath miles of ice. What terrifies you most is not that ancient civilizations might have possessed advanced surveying technology, but that they might have had access to maps created by intelligence that was never human at all. Maps that recorded the world as it existed before the great ice sheets formed. Maps that preserved the memory of an Earth that predates the dawn of human consciousness by millennia. If the knowledge encoded in the Piri-Reis map originates from sources that predate recorded human civilization, then every assumption you hold about the progressive development of human understanding collapses into recursive questioning. Who drew the original maps, and what happened to the civilization that possessed such comprehensive geographical knowledge of the entire planet? Section 2. The Vinland Map Deception. You are complicit in a forgery so sophisticated that it has spawned decades of academic warfare, a document that may be the most successful historical manipulation ever perpetrated, or the most viciously suppressed evidence of Norse exploration ever discovered. The Vinland map, acquired by Yale University in 1965, purports to show North American coastlines drawn 50 years before Columbus set sail, complete with runic annotations identifying Vinelanda Insula and references to Leif Erikson's expeditions. The authentication battles have raged for 6 decades, each scientific analysis contradicting the previous one in ways that suggest deliberate sabotage of the evidence. Carbon dating places the parchment in the 15th century, but ink analysis reveals titanium dioxide, a compound supposedly not used in medieval inks. However, later studies found that titanium dioxide occurs naturally in medieval iron gall inks when they age, creating a recursive loop of evidence that consumes its own credibility. What you discover when you examine the provenance trail is more disturbing than any question of authenticity. The map emerged from the private collection of an Italian book dealer who claimed it had been bound with the Historia Tartarorum, a genuine 1440s manuscript about Mongol history. The dealer, Enzo Ferrajoli, was later arrested for stealing rare books and manuscripts from Spanish libraries and the Vatican, but not before the Vinland map had already been sold and its origins obscured. The recursive deception operates on multiple levels simultaneously. If the map is genuine, it proves that Norse explorers possessed sophisticated cartographic knowledge of North American coastlines 5 centuries before the official discovery of the New World. If it is a forgery, it represents a level of historical manipulation so precise that it required intimate knowledge of 15th century papermaking, ink chemistry, and Norse exploration routes that would have been available only to a handful of medieval scholars or modern experts with access to classified historical research. But the binary of authentic versus forged collapses under deeper examination. The map's geographical accuracy exceeds what Norse explorers could have achieved with their navigational technology. Yet it also contains details that would have been unknown to modern forgers working in the 1950s. The Vinland map shows Greenland as an island, a fact not confirmed until the 20th century, while simultaneously depicting North American coastlines with precision that suggests aerial reconnaissance. Yale University's handling of the controversy reveals institutional patterns that mirror government-classified document protocols. Key portions of their technical analysis remain sealed in archives that researchers cannot access. The original scientific team that authenticated the map has been systematically replaced, their findings relegated to footnotes in subsequent studies that reach opposite conclusions. The recursive silencing creates its own evidence. Why would a simple forgery require such elaborate suppression? The most chilling possibility is that the Vinland map is both authentic and impossible, a genuine medieval document that records information no medieval civilization could have possessed. The Norse sagas describe Leif Erikson's navigators using sunstones to determine their position even in cloudy weather, crystalline devices that modern experiments have proven can function as sophisticated optical navigation instruments. But the existence of such advanced navigational technology raises recursive questions about the source of Norse expertise. The map's annotations reference places with names that appear in no other Norse documentation, regions identified with precision that suggests permanent settlements rather than temporary explorations. Vineland itself is described in runic text as a place where grapes grow without cultivation, a detail that aligns with modern botanical knowledge about North American wild grape distributions, but contradicts the Norse reputation as purely northern climate explorers. When you trace the academic careers of researchers who have defended the map's authenticity, you discover a pattern of professional marginalization, funding cuts, and early retirements that resembles the systematic silencing of scientists who have challenged official narratives in other fields. The message is clear. Whether the Vinland map is authentic or forged, asking too many questions about its origins is professionally hazardous. If medieval Norse explorers possessed cartographic knowledge that exceeded the capabilities of their era, what other evidence of advanced pre-Columbian contact has been systematically suppressed? And why does the revelation of earlier transatlantic exploration threaten contemporary historical orthodoxy so profoundly? Section 3. The Mercator Projection's Hidden Mathematics. You navigate your world using a mathematical lie so fundamental that it has shaped every geopolitical assumption of the modern era. a projection system that systematically distorts the size and importance of continents in ways that serve the psychological needs of European colonial expansion. Gerardus Mercator's 1569 world map introduced a coordinate system that preserves compass bearings for maritime navigation while inflating the apparent size of northern territories and diminishing equatorial regions, creating a visual hierarchy that mirrors the power structures of the civilization that created it. The mathematical recursion embedded in Mercator's projection creates a feedback loop between perception and reality that has influenced centuries of international relations. Greenland appears larger than Africa on Mercator-based maps, though Africa is actually 14 times larger. Russia appears to dominate the northern hemisphere, while the equatorial regions that contain the majority of human population appear cramped and diminished. Your mental map of the world, the internal geography that shapes your understanding of global relationships, has been systematically warped by mathematical formulas designed to serve maritime navigation rather than geographical accuracy. But Mercator's projection contains mathematical properties that its creator could not have fully understood in the 16th century. The projection requires calculus-based calculations for accurate construction, mathematical techniques not formally developed until the work of Newton and Leibniz a century later. Either Mercator possessed intuitive mathematical insights that preceded their formal discovery, or he had access to mathematical knowledge that has been erased from the historical record of Renaissance learning. The recursive horror deepens when you examine what Mercator chose to hide. His 1569 map includes a detailed depiction of the Arctic region labeled Septentrionalium Terrarum, the northern lands, showing the North Pole as surrounded by 4 large islands separated by narrow channels. Modern satellite imagery has revealed submarine ridge systems beneath the Arctic Ocean that align precisely with Mercator's imagined continental structures, geological features that were unknown to 16th century European explorers. Mercator claimed his Arctic geography was derived from the Inventio Fortunata, a 14th century text allegedly written by an English friar who had traveled to the Arctic regions. No copy of this text survives, but Mercator's detailed references to its contents suggest a document that described Arctic geography with precision that exceeded the exploratory capabilities of medieval travelers. The systematic disappearance of Mercator's source materials follows the same pattern of convenient destruction that surrounds other cartographic anomalies. The psychological manipulation encoded in the Mercator projection extends beyond mere size distortion. The projection places Europe at the visual center of the world while pushing other continents toward the margins, creating a subconscious hierarchy that has shaped international relations for centuries. The distortion is not accidental. It emerged from a civilization that needed to see itself as central to world geography in order to justify its expansion into territories it depicted as peripheral and less significant. When you examine the navigation charts that European explorers actually used during the Age of Exploration, you discover that they relied on portolan charts, detailed coastal maps that bore little resemblance to Mercator's systematic grid. The Mercator projection was not created to serve practical navigation, but to satisfy psychological needs that required the world to be mathematically organized around European perspectives. The projection's enduring dominance reveals more about human cognitive biases than about geographical reality. Modern GPS systems and digital mapping platforms continue to default to Mercator-based displays, perpetuating perceptual distortions that serve no contemporary purpose. The technological capacity exists to display geographically accurate projections, but the psychological comfort of familiar distortions proves more powerful than the desire for spatial accuracy. You navigate using maps that preserve the colonial assumptions of a 16th century Flemish cartographer, because accurate geography feels alien to minds trained on mathematical lies. The recursive trap closes when you realize that questioning the Mercator projection forces you to confront the extent to which your understanding of global relationships has been shaped by systematic mathematical deception. Every map app on your phone, every weather report showing global patterns, every visualization of international statistics relies on projection systems that preserve European psychological centrality while distorting the spatial relationships that define contemporary geopolitics. If the most fundamental tool of geographical understanding, coordinate projection, has been designed to serve the psychological needs of colonial expansion rather than spatial accuracy, what other basic assumptions about global relationships have been systematically distorted to preserve power structures that no longer serve contemporary reality? Section 4. The Antarctic Orontius-Phineas Revelation. You are confronting a map that depicts an impossible Antarctica, not the frozen wasteland you know, but a temperate continent with flowing rivers, detailed mountain ranges, and what appear to be systematic agricultural settlements drawn with the precision of a civilization that had conducted extensive ground surveys of regions that modern humans have never fully explored. The Orontius-Phineas map of 1531 shows Antarctica positioned correctly relative to other continents, sized accurately, and depicted with internal geographical features that align with modern sub-ice geological surveys in ways that suggest direct observational knowledge rather than cartographic speculation. The mathematical precision haunts every attempt at rational explanation. Phineas positions Antarctica's center accurately at the South Pole, shows the continent's distinctive shape with remarkable fidelity, and includes details of the transantarctic mountains that were not officially discovered until the 20th century. The map predates European exploration of the Southern Ocean by centuries, yet depicts coastal features with accuracy that exceeds many contemporary Antarctic maps, created by explorers with direct access to the region. What transforms this cartographic anomaly from curious to terrifying is the systematic nature of the internal detail. Phineas does not show Antarctica as an empty landmass, but as a populated continent with river systems, mountain passes, and what appear to be structural features that suggest human habitation. The level of detail implies extended ground-based exploration rather than coastal observation, knowledge that could only have been acquired through prolonged occupation of a continent that modern science insists has been uninhabitable for millions of years. The recursive impossibility multiplies when you examine Phineas's own documented sources. Like other Renaissance cartographers, he claimed to be compiling information from ancient Greek and Roman texts, but no surviving classical literature contains Antarctic geographical knowledge that matches the precision of his map. Either Phineas had access to source materials that have been systematically removed from historical archives, or he possessed independent information about Antarctic geography that originated outside the documented chain of European exploration. The institutional response to the Phineas Antarctic map follows predictable patterns of academic deflection. Mainstream historians dismiss the accuracy as coincidental, suggesting that Renaissance cartographers invented Antarctica's existence and accidentally depicted its true shape through fortunate speculation. But this explanation requires you to accept that 16th century mapmakers randomly drew a continent with precise proportions and accurate positioning while having no knowledge of its existence. A statistical impossibility that reveals more about the psychological needs of academic orthodoxy than about cartographic evidence. The geological correlation becomes more disturbing under detailed analysis. Phineas shows mountain ranges that align with the Ellsworth Mountains, coastal features that match the Ross ice shelf's underlying rocky structure, and river systems that correspond to subglacial water channels that were unknown until discovered by modern ice-penetrating radar. The precision extends to details that would require not just awareness of Antarctica's existence, but intimate familiarity with its internal geography. But the most chilling aspect of the Phineas map is what it suggests about the timing of Antarctic exploration. If the geographical knowledge depicted in the map is accurate, it must have been acquired during a period when Antarctica was accessible to surface exploration, either during a historical warm period when the ice sheets had retreated, or by a civilization with technology capable of operating in extreme polar conditions. Both possibilities contradict fundamental assumptions about climate history and technological development. The systematic erasure of corroborating evidence follows patterns that suggest deliberate suppression rather than accidental loss. References to Antarctic exploration appear in fragmentary form in various historical texts. Mentions of southern lands in ancient Greek writings, Roman accounts of explorers who sailed beyond the realm of Boreas. But complete accounts have vanished from archives with suspicious consistency. The survival of maps without supporting textual evidence suggests that geographical knowledge has been preserved, while the historical context that would explain its acquisition has been systematically eliminated. When you trace the academic careers of researchers who have investigated correlations between Renaissance Antarctic maps and modern geological surveys, you discover professional marginalization that resembles the treatment of scientists who have challenged other historical orthodoxies. The message is unambiguous. Asking questions about impossible cartographic accuracy is professionally hazardous, regardless of the quality of the evidence. If Renaissance cartographers possessed accurate knowledge of Antarctic geography that could only have been acquired through direct exploration during historical periods when such exploration should have been impossible, what other evidence of advanced ancient exploration has been systematically removed from the historical record to preserve contemporary assumptions about technological progress? Section 5. The impossible accuracy of medieval Mappa Mundi. You are examining the Hereford Mappa Mundi, a 13th century map that academic orthodoxy dismisses as medieval fantasy. a circular worldview dominated by religious symbolism and geographical ignorance. Yet when subjected to modern analytical techniques, it reveals mathematical relationships and geographical accuracies that suggest access to surveying knowledge that officially didn't exist for centuries after its creation. This medieval masterpiece, supposedly created by monks who never traveled beyond their monastery walls, contains coordinate relationships that align with satellite measurements in ways that transform religious cartography into evidence of suppressed scientific sophistication. The recursive deception operates at multiple levels of academic interpretation. Surface analysis presents the Hereford map as typical medieval cartography. Jerusalem positioned at the world's center, east-oriented toward the top. Fantastic creatures inhabiting the margins, and geographical relationships subordinated to theological symbolism. But mathematical analysis of the actual coordinate relationships reveals systematic accuracies that contradict the narrative of medieval geographical ignorance. When you measure the proportional distances between major cities on the Hereford map and compare them to actual geographical relationships, you discover correlations that exceed statistical probability. The relative positions of European centers, Mediterranean ports, and African landmarks align with geodetic surveys at precision levels that suggest systematic measurement rather than religious imagination. The mapmakers possessed knowledge of continental proportions that would not be officially acquired by European civilization until the age of global exploration 3 centuries later. The systematic inclusion of accurate details that were supposedly unknown to medieval scholars creates cascading impossibilities. The Hereford map correctly positions the Nile's sources in the Ethiopian highlands, depicts the Caspian Sea as a closed body of water rather than connected to the Arctic Ocean, a misconception that persisted in official European geography until the 18th century, and shows African coastal features with precision that suggests direct observational knowledge rather than classical speculation. But the most disturbing accuracy appears in the map's depiction of regions that medieval Europeans had supposedly never visited. The map shows accurate relative positioning of cities across Asia, includes geographical features of the Indian subcontinent that align with modern topographical surveys, and depicts island chains in the Indian Ocean with systematic precision that suggests access to comprehensive navigational records of maritime exploration that predates documented European contact by centuries. The institutional suppression of research into medieval cartographic accuracy follows patterns that mirror the treatment of other anomalous historical evidence. Scholars who have published detailed mathematical analyses of coordinate accuracy in medieval maps experience systematic marginalization, funding cuts, and academic exile that suggests their research threatens fundamental assumptions about the progressive development of human knowledge. The recursive horror emerges when you realize that the systematic dismissal of medieval geographical knowledge as religious fantasy may itself be a modern fantasy, a projection of contemporary assumptions about technological progress onto historical evidence that contradicts linear models of intellectual development. The characterization of medieval maps as symbolic rather than geographical may be a defensive strategy designed to avoid confronting evidence that medieval civilization possessed surveying capabilities that challenge assumptions about the relationship between technology and knowledge. When you examine the actual construction techniques used to create medieval maps, you discover mathematical sophistication that contradicts narratives of medieval ignorance. The coordinate systems used in major mappa mundi require trigonometric calculations, spherical geometry, and proportional relationships that suggest systematic mathematical training rather than intuitive artistry. Medieval cartographers were not primitive religious artists. They were mathematicians whose precision has been systematically underestimated by scholars who needed medieval civilization to appear technologically inferior. The survival of accurate geographical knowledge in medieval maps, while corresponding exploratory accounts have vanished, follows the same pattern of selective preservation that appears in other cartographic anomalies. Maps survive while the historical context that would explain their accuracy disappears, creating a recursive puzzle where evidence of sophisticated knowledge exists without explanatory framework. The systematic academic dismissal of medieval cartographic sophistication serves contemporary psychological needs that require historical progress to follow linear patterns. Acknowledging that 13th century monks possessed geographical knowledge that exceeded official European understanding for centuries afterward would force recognition that technological development follows recursive rather than progressive patterns. That knowledge can be lost and rediscovered in cycles that challenge assumptions about inevitable intellectual advancement. If medieval cartographers possessed systematic geographical knowledge that modern analysis confirms as accurate, what other evidence of sophisticated pre-modern scientific understanding has been systematically reinterpreted as religious symbolism to preserve contemporary assumptions about the unique technological achievements of recent centuries? Section 6. The Phantom Islands of Collective Delusion. You are navigating through centuries of maps that depict islands that never existed, yet appeared with such cartographic consistency across cultures and continents that they shaped international law, territorial disputes, and maritime commerce for over 400 years. Phantom land masses that reveal how collective belief can literally reshape geography until reality itself becomes subordinate to consensus delusion. These spectral territories, Brazil Rock, Sandy Island, the Isle of Demons, appeared on official navigation charts, influenced colonial expansion patterns, and disappeared only when satellite technology made their non-existence undeniable. The systematic nature of phantom island cartography creates recursive loops of institutional validation. Brazil Rock appeared on Portuguese charts in 1325, migrated across centuries of maps created by different cartographers working in isolation from each other, and maintained consistent positioning west of Ireland until British Admiralty surveys in 1865 finally declared its non-existence. The island's cartographic persistence cannot be explained by copying errors. Different mapmakers independently confirmed its location through observations that were either systematically fabricated or referred to phenomena that transcended simple geographical reality. Sandy Island presents an even more disturbing case of cartographic persistence conflicting with physical reality. First depicted on British naval charts in 1876, positioned between Australia and New Caledonia, it appeared on official maps for 136 years, despite multiple navigation reports describing empty ocean at its supposed coordinates. French hydrographic surveys confirmed its existence in 1979. Australian maritime authorities included it in territorial waters calculations, and Google Earth displayed it as late as 2012, creating a bureaucratic reality that persisted independent of physical evidence. The recursive horror intensifies when you examine the institutional mechanisms that preserved Phantom Islands despite contradictory evidence. Maritime authorities developed elaborate explanations for navigator reports of empty water at marked island positions, seasonal submersion due to tidal variations, atmospheric distortion that made islands appear displaced from their actual positions, compass variations that caused systematic navigational errors. The bureaucratic need to preserve cartographic authority created rationalization systems more elaborate than acknowledging the possibility of fundamental mapping errors. But Phantom Islands were not random cartographic mistakes. They appeared in patterns that served specific economic and political functions. The Isle of Demons, positioned on early Canadian maps, provided justification for avoiding northern shipping routes that would have competed with established southern passages. Brazil Rock's consistent positioning offered navigational reference points for Atlantic crossings while simultaneously creating territorial claims that extended European sovereignty into previously international waters. The psychological investment in Phantom Island existence reveals how deeply human consciousness depends on cartographic certainty. Maritime insurance companies calculated risk assessments based on Phantom Island positions, colonial governments issued territorial claims over non-existent land masses, and international treaties included provisions for islands that existed only in bureaucratic imagination. The economic and legal systems that developed around phantom geography demonstrate how institutional reality can achieve independence from physical evidence. The systematic resistance to Phantom Island removal from official charts followed patterns that mirror contemporary institutional responses to evidence that contradicts established narratives. When navigators reported empty ocean at marked island positions, authorities questioned the competence of the observers rather than the accuracy of the maps. When technological advances made Phantom Island non-existence undeniable, bureaucratic systems developed elaborate procedures for declassifying islands rather than acknowledging fundamental cartographic errors. The most disturbing aspect of Phantom Island persistence is not that mapmakers created non-existent territories, but that entire civilizations organized their understanding of global geography around systematic delusions that served psychological needs more than navigational accuracy. The Phantom Islands provided psychological comfort by filling empty oceanic spaces with imagined landmasses that made the world appear less vast and inhospitable than physical reality suggested. The recursive trap reveals itself when you realize that Phantom Island persistence demonstrates how institutional authority can maintain false geographical knowledge for centuries, despite contradictory physical evidence. If major maritime nations could preserve non-existent islands on official navigation charts for over 400 years, what other fundamental geographical assumptions might represent institutional consensus rather than physical reality? The elimination of Phantom Islands from contemporary maps has not eliminated the psychological mechanisms that created them. Modern cartographic systems continue to serve institutional needs that prioritize bureaucratic consistency over empirical accuracy, creating new forms of geographical distortion that preserve power structures while claiming scientific objectivity. What phantom territories exist in contemporary geographical understanding, and how do current institutional systems prevent recognition of systematic cartographic delusions that serve political and economic interests rather than navigational accuracy? Section 7. The Zeno Brothers Arctic Conspiracy. You are examining a 16th century map that depicts Arctic geography with impossible accuracy, created by Venetian explorers who claimed to have reached Greenland, Iceland, and mysterious northern territories decades before Columbus. Yet their account contains details that align with modern Arctic exploration in ways that suggest either systematic fabrication designed to serve Venetian political interests or access to geographical knowledge that predates documented European Arctic exploration by centuries. The Zeno map of 1558 shows Greenland connected to Europe by a land bridge, depicts Iceland with proportional accuracy, and includes mysterious islands named Friesland, Estotaland, and Drogeo that appear nowhere in contemporary geographical records, yet contain descriptive details that align with actual Arctic territories discovered centuries later. Niccolò and Antonio Zeno claimed their 14th century ancestors had explored these regions, providing letters and navigational records that described Arctic phenomena with precision that exceeded official European knowledge until modern polar expeditions. The recursive impossibility multiplies when you examine the technological descriptions embedded in the Zeno narrative. Their account describes indigenous populations using underground heating systems to maintain agricultural productivity in subarctic climates, geothermal cultivation techniques that were unknown to European civilization but align precisely with Icelandic farming methods that sustained medieval Nordic settlements. The systematic accuracy of technological detail suggests either extraordinary observational skills or access to information sources that have been erased from documented exploration records. The institutional response to the Zeno map follows predictable patterns of academic dismissal, combined with suspicious suppression of detailed analysis. Mainstream historians classify the entire narrative as elaborate fiction designed to enhance Venetian prestige during competition with Portuguese and Spanish exploration claims. But this explanation requires accepting that Renaissance forgers possessed detailed knowledge of Arctic geography and indigenous technology that would not be officially documented for centuries afterward, a level of sophisticated fabrication that suggests access to genuine source materials. The geographical correlations become more disturbing under systematic analysis. The Zeno map's depiction of Estotaland includes coastal features that align with Labrador and Newfoundland, complete with descriptions of indigenous populations using European-style agricultural techniques and possessing libraries filled with Latin texts. Either the Zeno brothers fabricated impossibly detailed descriptions of North American indigenous civilization, or they preserved accounts of pre-Columbian contact that contradict official narratives of European discovery. But the most chilling aspect of the Zeno conspiracy is not the possibility of early Arctic exploration. It is the systematic pattern of evidence destruction that surrounds their claims. The original Zeno family archives were conveniently destroyed during the Siege of Venice in 1797, eliminating primary sources that could have verified the impossible geographical knowledge. The destruction follows the same temporal pattern as other cartographic evidence, disappearing precisely when modern analytical techniques might have resolved questions of authenticity. When you trace the academic careers of researchers who have defended the geographical accuracy of Zeno map details, you discover professional marginalization that mirrors the treatment of scientists who have challenged other historical orthodoxies. The message is clear. Investigating correlations between Renaissance exploration claims and modern geographical knowledge is professionally hazardous, regardless of the empirical evidence. The recursive horror emerges when you realize that dismissing the Zeno map as fiction may itself be a defensive strategy designed to avoid confronting evidence that medieval European exploration capabilities exceeded official historical narratives. If Venetian navigators possessed detailed Arctic geographical knowledge in the 14th century, it challenges linear assumptions about exploration progress and suggests that technological capabilities have followed cyclical rather than progressive development patterns. If the Zeno brothers preserved genuine accounts of medieval Arctic exploration that predate official European polar expeditions by centuries, what other evidence of advanced pre-modern navigation has been systematically reinterpreted as fiction to preserve contemporary assumptions about the unique technological achievements of recent exploration? Section 8. The Disappearing Lands of Fra Mauro. You are confronting the Fra Mauro world map of 1459, a masterpiece of medieval cartography that depicts continents, islands, and geographical features with precision that should have been impossible for 15th century European civilization, yet contains systematic accuracies that modern satellite imagery has confirmed in regions that medieval explorers never officially visited. This Venetian monk's circular map of the world includes details of African geography, Asian coastlines, and mysterious southern landmasses that suggest access to comprehensive global surveying knowledge that contradicts every assumption about medieval European geographical understanding. The mathematical sophistication embedded in Fra Mauro's projection system reveals knowledge of spherical trigonometry and coordinate mathematics that predates their official development in European universities by centuries. The map accurately depicts the proportional relationship between continents, positions major cities with geodetic precision, and includes coastal details of regions that European civilization would not officially explore until the Age of Discovery decades later. Either Fra Mauro possessed mathematical insights that surpassed those of his contemporaries, or he had access to surveying data that originated from systematic global exploration conducted by unknown civilizations. The systematic accuracy of African geographical detail creates the most disturbing impossibilities. Fra Mauro's map shows the true shape of the African continent with remarkable fidelity, depicts the source regions of major river systems, and includes details of the Ethiopian highlands that align with modern topographical surveys. The precision extends to coastal features of East Africa, interior mountain ranges, and even accurate relative positioning of islands in the Indian Ocean. Geographical knowledge that suggests comprehensive exploration of regions that medieval Europeans supposedly never reached. But the most terrifying revelation appears in Fra Mauro's depiction of mysterious southern territories that he labels as lands recently discovered. These regions show geographical features that align with Antarctic coastal structures, include detailed representations of mountain ranges that correspond to modern sub-ice geological surveys, and contain annotations describing temperate climates and navigable waterways in regions that modern science insists have been frozen for millions of years. The recursive impossibility deepens when you examine Fra Mauro's documented sources. Like other medieval cartographers, he claimed to compile information from classical texts, contemporary travelers, and maritime charts acquired from various cultures. But systematic analysis of surviving source materials reveals no documents that could account for the precision of his geographical knowledge. Either Fra Mauro had access to comprehensive surveying records that have been systematically removed from historical archives, or he possessed independent information about global geography that originated outside documented European exploration. The institutional suppression of research into Fra Mauro's geographical accuracy follows patterns that mirror the treatment of other anomalous cartographic evidence. Scholars who have published detailed analyses of coordinate precision in medieval maps experience professional marginalization, funding cuts, and academic exile that suggests their research threatens fundamental assumptions about medieval European capabilities. The systematic silencing creates its own evidence. Why would a simple medieval map require such elaborate suppression of analytical research? The survival of Fra Mauro's impossible geographical accuracy, while corresponding exploratory accounts have vanished, follows the same pattern of selective preservation that appears in other cartographic anomalies. The map survives as a museum piece, classified as medieval art rather than historical evidence, while the documentation that would explain its accuracy has disappeared from archives with suspicious consistency. When you trace the ownership history of the Fra Mauro map, you discover that it has been controlled by institutions with connections to intelligence agencies, military, cartographic divisions, and organizations with classified access to historical geographical research. The pattern suggests that the map's true significance has been recognized by authorities who possess analytical capabilities beyond those available to public academic institutions. The recursive trap closes when you realize that the systematic academic dismissal of medieval cartographic sophistication serves contemporary psychological needs that require historical progress to follow linear patterns. Acknowledging that 15th century monks possessed global geographical knowledge that exceeded official European understanding for centuries afterward would force recognition that technological development follows cyclical rather than progressive patterns, that comprehensive knowledge can exist and disappear in ways that challenge assumptions about inevitable intellectual advancement. If Fra Mauro possessed systematic global geographical knowledge that modern analysis confirms as accurate, what other evidence of sophisticated medieval scientific understanding has been systematically preserved as art, while its analytical implications have been suppressed to maintain contemporary assumptions about unique modern technological achievements. Section 9. The Chinese Treasure Maps of Zheng-He. You are examining cartographic evidence of the most extensive maritime exploration program in human history, a systematic Chinese survey of global geography conducted between 1405 and 1433 that reached every continent, established permanent bases on every major ocean, and created detailed navigational charts that were systematically destroyed by subsequent Chinese administrations to eliminate evidence of global dominance that contradicted isolationist political policies. The treasure fleets of Admiral Zheng, who possessed navigational technology and geographical knowledge that exceeded European capabilities for centuries, yet their achievements have been systematically minimized in historical narratives that require European exploration to appear pioneering rather than derivative. The scale of Chinese maritime operations dwarfs European exploration programs that receive historical prominence. Zheng-He commanded fleets of over 300 vessels, including treasure ships over 400 feet in length, larger than any European vessel constructed until the 18th century. His expeditions employed over 27,000 personnel, including navigators trained in astronomical calculation, cartographers equipped with systematic surveying instruments, and diplomatic corps capable of establishing permanent trading relationships with civilizations across 4 continents. But the systematic destruction of Chinese exploration records creates recursive puzzles where evidence of unprecedented maritime achievement exists, while documentation of specific accomplishments has been deliberately eliminated. The official Chinese histories mention voyages to Southeast Asia, the Indian Ocean, and the eastern coast of Africa, but surviving fragments of unofficial records describe expeditions that reached the Americas, circumnavigated the African continent, and established bases in regions that European explorers would not officially discover for centuries. The technological sophistication of Chinese navigation capabilities contradicts Western assumptions about maritime development. Chinese fleets used magnetic compasses 3 centuries before European adoption, employed sophisticated astronomical calculation for precise positioning, and utilized detailed nautical charts that depicted global ocean current systems, seasonal weather patterns, and safe harbor locations across multiple continents. The systematic nature of their geographical knowledge suggests comprehensive surveying programs rather than casual exploration. The surviving fragments of Chinese world maps reveal geographical accuracy that exceeded European cartographic knowledge until modern surveying technology. The Cognido map of 1402, created using Chinese geographical data, shows Africa with accurate proportional relationships, depicts the Arabian Peninsula with precise coastal detail, and includes European geographical features that Chinese explorers should not have known through documented contact. The precision suggests systematic global reconnaissance that has been systematically erased from historical records. The institutional resistance to acknowledging the extent of Chinese maritime exploration follows patterns that serve contemporary geopolitical narratives, requiring European civilization to appear historically dominant in global exploration and technological development. Western historical institutions have systematically minimized Chinese achievements, dismissing evidence of transoceanic exploration as nationalist mythology. while simultaneously acknowledging that Chinese navigation technology surpassed European capabilities by centuries. But the most disturbing aspect of Chinese exploration suppression is not Western academic bias. It is the systematic Chinese destruction of their own historical achievements. The Ming Dynasty deliberately eliminated evidence of global maritime dominance, destroyed treasure fleet records, and implemented isolationist policies that denied future Chinese generations knowledge of their civilization's unprecedented exploration accomplishments. The self-inflicted historical amnesia suggests that Chinese authorities possessed information about their global activities that they considered too dangerous to preserve. The recursive horror emerges when you examine the timing of Chinese exploration termination. The treasure fleet programs ended abruptly in 1433, precisely when European exploration programs began expanding. Chinese withdrawal from global maritime activity created a power vacuum that European civilizations filled. But the synchronization suggests coordinated rather than coincidental transitions. Either Chinese and European authorities collaborated in managed transitions of global maritime control, or Chinese withdrawal resulted from discoveries that made continued global exploration too dangerous to sustain. When you trace the careers of contemporary historians who have investigated the full extent of Chinese maritime exploration, you discover professional marginalization that mirrors the treatment of researchers who have challenged other historical orthodoxies. The message is clear. Acknowledging that Chinese civilization achieved comprehensive global exploration centuries before European programs threatens fundamental assumptions about Western technological superiority and historical dominance. The survival of advanced Chinese navigational technology, while comprehensive exploration records have been systematically destroyed, follows the same pattern of selective preservation that appears in other cartographic anomalies. The tools survive while the context that would explain their sophisticated application disappears, creating recursive puzzles where evidence of advanced capabilities exists without explanatory framework. If Chinese treasure fleets conducted systematic global exploration that exceeded European maritime programs by centuries, what other evidence of advanced non-European technological achievements has been systematically suppressed to preserve Western assumptions about unique modern technological dominance in global exploration and geographical knowledge? Section 10. The Watcher's Stone Maps of Ancient Australia. You are confronting Aboriginal rock art and stone arrangements that function as sophisticated navigational systems, encoding geographical knowledge of the Australian continent with mathematical precision that rivals contemporary surveying technology, yet represents information systems that predate European arrival by tens of thousands of years. Systematic mapping knowledge that challenges every Western assumption about primitive indigenous technology, while revealing navigation capabilities that suggest comprehensive continental exploration coordinated across multiple tribal groups over millennia. The Uluru stone arrangements function as three-dimensional maps that encode travel routes, water source locations, seasonal weather patterns, and geographical landmarks across distances exceeding 2,000 kilometers. The mathematical precision of angular relationships between stones corresponds to actual compass bearings between distant locations, creating navigational accuracy that requires systematic surveying knowledge rather than casual geographical observation. Aboriginal elders described these arrangements as teaching tools created by the Watchers, ancestral beings who possessed comprehensive knowledge of continental geography that they encoded in permanent stone structures. The systematic nature of Aboriginal geographical encoding creates recursive puzzles where sophisticated mathematical knowledge exists without corresponding technological infrastructure. The song lines, traditional navigation routes that cross the entire continent, contain detailed geographical information preserved through oral tradition with accuracy that exceeds many contemporary maps. Aboriginal communities describe landscape features, water sources, and travel hazards with precision that suggests systematic continental surveying conducted by coordinated exploration programs spanning thousands of years. But the most disturbing aspect of Aboriginal cartographic systems is their mathematical sophistication. The stone arrangements use geometric relationships that require understanding of trigonometry, spherical projection, and coordinate mathematics that Western civilization did not develop until recent centuries. Aboriginal navigation systems demonstrate knowledge of the Earth's curvature, compensate for magnetic declination, and include calculations for seasonal variation in celestial navigation that suggest astronomical knowledge rivaling contemporary scientific understanding. The institutional response to Aboriginal cartographic sophistication follows predictable patterns of cultural dismissal combined with systematic suppression of analytical research. Western anthropologists classify Aboriginal geographical knowledge as traditional ecological wisdom, rather than acknowledging it as systematic scientific achievement, creating academic frameworks that preserve assumptions about primitive indigenous technology while avoiding confrontation with evidence that contradicts Western technological superiority narratives. The recursive impossibility deepens when you examine the age of Aboriginal geographical systems. Radiocarbon dating of stone arrangements indicates continuous use for over 40,000 years, suggesting that sophisticated continental navigation knowledge predates the development of agriculture, writing systems, and every other marker of technological civilization. Either Aboriginal societies developed advanced mathematical and surveying capabilities independent of technological infrastructure, or they preserved knowledge systems that originated from earlier civilizations, with capabilities that exceeded contemporary understanding. The survival of comprehensive geographical knowledge through oral tradition creates additional impossibilities. The systematic transmission of detailed navigational information across hundreds of generations requires mnemonic techniques and cultural preservation systems that suggest sophisticated educational technologies disguised as traditional practices. Aboriginal songlines preserve geographical data with accuracy that challenges assumptions about the limitations of pre-literate information systems. When you examine the careers of researchers who have investigated the mathematical precision of Aboriginal navigation systems, you discover professional marginalization that mirrors the treatment of scientists who have challenged other cultural orthodoxies. The academic establishment systematically prevents recognition that Indigenous Australian societies developed geographical and mathematical knowledge that exceeded European capabilities, preserving cultural hierarchies that require indigenous technology to appear primitive relative to Western achievements. The systematic suppression of research into Aboriginal cartographic sophistication serves contemporary psychological needs that require indigenous cultures to appear technologically inferior to Western civilization. Acknowledging that Aboriginal societies possessed systematic continental surveying knowledge for tens of thousands of years would challenge fundamental assumptions about the relationship between technological infrastructure and intellectual achievement. But the most terrifying implication of Aboriginal cartographic systems is their suggestion that comprehensive geographical knowledge can exist independent of technological infrastructure, that systematic scientific understanding can develop and survive through purely human information systems that preserve accuracy across millennia without requiring external technological support. The recursive trap reveals itself when you realize that dismissing Aboriginal geographical sophistication as traditional knowledge rather than scientific achievement represents cultural bias designed to preserve Western assumptions about unique technological capabilities. Aboriginal navigation systems demonstrate that systematic geographical knowledge can achieve precision that rivals contemporary surveying technology while operating through information systems that Western science cannot fully comprehend. If Aboriginal societies preserved comprehensive continental geographical knowledge through oral tradition systems for over 40,000 years, what other evidence of sophisticated indigenous scientific understanding has been systematically reinterpreted as primitive cultural practice to maintain Western assumptions about unique modern technological achievements in geographical and mathematical knowledge? Section 11. The Vatican's Hidden Ptolemy Revisions. You are accessing the most closely guarded cartographic collection in existence. The Vatican's secret archives' complete collection of Ptolemy manuscripts, including versions that contain geographical knowledge that contradicts official historical narratives about ancient geographical understanding. Maps that show continents and islands that Ptolemy should never have known about, and systematic revisions to Ptolemy's geography that were implemented across centuries to eliminate evidence of ancient global exploration that predated Christian civilization by millennia. The systematic revision of Ptolemy's geographical works represents the most comprehensive historical manipulation ever conducted. The Ptolemy manuscripts preserved in public collections show a classical world limited to Europe, Africa, and Asia, with vague references to lands beyond the known world. But the complete manuscripts secured in Vatican archives include detailed descriptions of continents across vast oceans, systematic catalogues of islands in regions that ancient Mediterranean civilizations supposedly never explored, and navigational instructions for reaching territories that would not be officially discovered until the age of exploration. The recursive deception operates through systematic editing of historical texts across centuries. Each generation of Christian scholars removed additional references to pre-Christian geographical knowledge, creating sanitized versions of ancient texts that eliminated evidence of global exploration capabilities that predated the spread of Christianity. The original Ptolemy manuscripts describe systematic trade relationships with American civilizations, detailed knowledge of Australian geography, and navigation routes to Antarctic territories. information that was systematically excised from copies available to public scholars. But the most disturbing revelation in the complete Ptolemy collection is not what it describes. It is the systematic nature of the cover-up that suppressed it. Vatican authorities have preserved evidence of ancient global geographical knowledge while simultaneously funding historical research that denies its existence. The institution that possesses the most comprehensive collection of ancient cartographic knowledge actively maintains academic orthodoxies that classify ancient global exploration as impossible, creating recursive loops where evidence and denial coexist within the same institutional structure. The technological implications of complete Ptolemy manuscripts challenge every assumption about ancient capabilities. Ptolemy's original texts describe navigation instruments that function as sophisticated calculating devices, astronomical observation techniques that achieve precision rivaling contemporary measurement, and geographical surveying methods that suggest systematic global reconnaissance programs conducted by ancient Mediterranean civilizations over centuries. The institutional maintenance of Ptolemy revision programs reveals the systematic nature of historical manipulation. Vatican archives contain documentation of editing projects that span centuries, systematic instructions for removing specific types of geographical references from copied manuscripts, and correspondence between scholars coordinating the elimination of evidence that ancient civilizations possessed global exploration capabilities. The systematic nature of the suppression program demonstrates institutional commitment to maintaining historical narratives that serve contemporary religious and political interests. The survival of complete Ptolemy manuscripts, while edited versions were distributed to public institutions, follows the same pattern of selective preservation that appears in other historical manipulations. The Vatican preserved evidence of ancient geographical sophistication, while ensuring that publicly available sources eliminated details that would challenge assumptions about the unique achievements of Christian civilization in global exploration and geographical knowledge. When you examine the academic careers of scholars who have been granted access to complete Vatican cartographic collections, you discover systematic career trajectories that suggest institutional control rather than independent research. Researchers who have viewed unedited ancient geographical texts either become Vatican employees, experience professional trajectories that prevent publication of their findings, or suffer personal difficulties that eliminate their capacity to continue research into ancient geographical knowledge. The recursive horror emerges when you realize that the institution that claims spiritual authority based on ancient wisdom simultaneously suppresses evidence of ancient intellectual achievements that exceed contemporary capabilities. The Vatican's preservation of comprehensive ancient geographical knowledge, while denying its existence to contemporary scholars, represents systematic institutional duplicity that transcends simple religious authority and extends into deliberate manipulation of human historical understanding. The systematic elimination of ancient geographical knowledge from public access serves contemporary psychological needs that require modern civilization to appear intellectually superior to ancient societies. Acknowledging that ancient Mediterranean civilizations possessed systematic global geographical knowledge, would challenge fundamental assumptions about intellectual progress and suggest that technological capabilities have followed cyclical rather than linear development patterns. If the Vatican has preserved complete ancient geographical texts that demonstrate systematic ancient global exploration while actively suppressing public access to this knowledge, what other evidence of advanced ancient intellectual achievements has been systematically controlled by institutions that benefit from maintaining assumptions about unique modern technological and intellectual superiority? Section 12. The Jesuit Cartographic Intelligence Network. You are uncovering the most sophisticated global intelligence network in human history, a systematic Jesuit program of geographical reconnaissance that operated for over 4 centuries, embedded trained cartographers in every major civilization on Earth, and created comprehensive global maps that exceeded the accuracy of official European exploration while serving secret institutional objectives that transcended religious mission work and extended into systematic geopolitical intelligence gathering that shaped international relations through controlled manipulation of geographical knowledge. The systematic nature of Jesuit geographical operations contradicts narratives that portray them as religious missionaries who incidentally acquired geographical knowledge through spiritual work. Jesuit archives reveal systematic training programs that prepared operatives in advanced surveying techniques, astronomical navigation, and coordinate mathematics before deployment to regions targeted for comprehensive geographical intelligence gathering. These operatives possessed technical capabilities that exceeded those available to official European explorers, suggesting access to advanced training resources and surveying instruments that were not available through conventional educational systems. The global scope of Jesuit cartographic operations reveals coordination that suggests centralized intelligence objectives rather than dispersed religious activities. Jesuit operatives simultaneously conducted systematic geographical surveys in China, India, South America, North America, and Africa, creating comprehensive global mapping programs that required coordination between operatives working in isolation from each other across different continents. The systematic nature of their geographical knowledge acquisition suggests institutional objectives that transcended individual missionary activities and served coordinated geopolitical intelligence requirements. But the most disturbing aspect of Jesuit cartographic operations is their systematic suppression of geographical knowledge that contradicted institutional interests. Jesuit archives contain evidence of comprehensive maps that were created but never published, detailed geographical surveys that were classified and removed from circulation, and systematic programs of geographical misinformation that were disseminated to serve specific political objectives. The Jesuits possessed accurate, global geographical knowledge, while simultaneously controlling the distribution of geographical information to serve institutional power interests. The technological sophistication of Jesuit surveying capabilities raises recursive questions about the source of their advanced equipment and training. Jesuit operatives possessed navigation instruments that exceeded the technical capabilities available to contemporary European explorers, employed mathematical calculation techniques that were not taught in European universities, and demonstrated systematic knowledge of advanced cartographic projection methods that were not officially developed until centuries later. Either the Jesuits developed independent technological capabilities that surpassed those of contemporary European civilization, or they had access to advanced surveying technology from undisclosed sources. The institutional resistance to research into Jesuit cartographic activities follows patterns that suggest ongoing classification of historical intelligence operations. Academic institutions systematically prevent detailed investigation of Jesuit geographical archives. Researchers who attempt comprehensive analysis of Jesuit cartographic capabilities experience professional marginalization, and access to complete Jesuit geographical records remains restricted through classification systems that transcend normal historical archive policies. The survival of extensive Jesuit geographical intelligence, while corresponding operational documentation has been systematically classified, follows patterns that mirror contemporary intelligence agency document control. Jesuit archives preserve evidence of comprehensive global geographical knowledge, while systematically restricting access to documentation that would explain the institutional objectives served by their intelligence-gathering operations. When you trace the institutional relationships between Jesuit cartographic programs and contemporary intelligence agencies, you discover continuity patterns that suggest systematic preservation of geographical intelligence capabilities across centuries. Organizations that inherited Jesuit geographical archives continue to operate classification systems that prevent public access to historical geographical intelligence, creating recursive loops where historical intelligence operations remain classified to serve contemporary institutional interests. The recursive trap reveals itself when you realize that the systematic Jesuit suppression of geographical knowledge created information control systems that continue to operate through contemporary institutional structures. The Jesuits established precedents for controlling geographical information to serve geopolitical interests that transcended scientific accuracy, creating institutional frameworks that continue to manipulate geographical knowledge to serve political rather than academic objectives. The most terrifying implication of Jesuit cartographic intelligence operations is their demonstration that comprehensive global geographical knowledge has been systematically controlled by institutional authorities who possess information that exceeds publicly available geographical understanding, while simultaneously manipulating the distribution of geographical knowledge to serve specific political and economic interests. If Jesuit operatives conducted systematic global geographical intelligence gathering that exceeded official European exploration capabilities, while serving institutional objectives that remain classified after 4 centuries, what other evidence of historical intelligence operations has been systematically controlled to prevent recognition that geographical knowledge has been manipulated to serve institutional power interests rather than scientific accuracy? Section 13. The Forbidden Toponyms of Suppressed Territories. You are discovering that the names themselves contain the evidence. Systematic linguistic analysis of ancient place names reveals geographical knowledge that predates official exploration by millennia. Indigenous toponyms that describe territories with precision that suggests comprehensive continental surveying, and deliberate renaming programs that eliminated linguistic evidence of ancient global exploration by systematically replacing indigenous place names with European designations that obscured, rather than preserved, geographical knowledge encoded in original linguistic systems. The systematic analysis of pre-European toponyms reveals geographical precision that transcends casual naming conventions. Indigenous place names across continents contain mathematical relationships, directional references, and geographical descriptors that function as coordinate systems encoded in linguistic structures that preserve navigation information across generations without requiring written documentation. The precision of geographical encoding in original place names suggests systematic continental surveying programs conducted by coordinated indigenous exploration networks that achieved comprehensive geographical knowledge through linguistic information systems. But the systematic European replacement of indigenous toponyms followed patterns that suggest deliberate suppression of geographical knowledge rather than casual colonial renaming. European authorities systematically replaced indigenous place names that contained specific types of geographical information, particularly names that described long-distance travel routes, intercontinental connections, and geographical features that suggested global rather than regional exploration capabilities. The systematic nature of toponym replacement suggests recognition that indigenous place names contained evidence of geographical knowledge that contradicted European exploration narratives. The recursive impossibility emerges when you examine the mathematical precision embedded in indigenous toponym systems. Place names across continents contain systematic relationships that function as coordinate systems, preserve accurate directional information across thousands of kilometers, and encode navigation instructions that remain accurate across millennia of linguistic evolution. Indigenous toponyms demonstrate that comprehensive geographical knowledge can be preserved through linguistic systems that function as distributed mapping networks without requiring technological infrastructure. The institutional resistance to systematic analysis of pre-European toponyms follows patterns that mirror the suppression of other geographical anomalies. Academic institutions prevent comprehensive linguistic analysis of indigenous place names. Researchers who investigate mathematical relationships in toponym systems experience professional marginalization, and access to complete databases of original indigenous place names remains restricted through classification systems that prevent systematic analysis of geographical knowledge encoded in linguistic structures. The systematic European elimination of specific types of indigenous toponyms creates recursive evidence through absence. The patterns of which place names were preserved versus those that were systematically eliminated reveals European recognition that indigenous linguistic systems contained geographical knowledge that threatened colonial narratives of European exploration priority. The systematic nature of toponym suppression demonstrates that European authorities understood they were eliminating evidence of geographical knowledge that predated their arrival by significant periods. The survival of indigenous toponyms in isolated regions provides fragmentary evidence of systematic continental geographical knowledge that was encoded in linguistic systems designed to preserve navigation information across generations. The remaining original place names contain references to territories across vast distances, describe geographical features with mathematical precision, and preserve cultural memory of systematic intercontinental travel that suggests indigenous civilizations possessed comprehensive global geographical knowledge. When you trace the academic careers of linguists who have investigated mathematical relationships in indigenous toponym systems, you discover professional trajectories that suggest institutional control rather than independent research. Researchers who have identified systematic geographical knowledge encoded in indigenous place names either experience career marginalization, focus their subsequent research on less sensitive linguistic topics, or suffer personal difficulties that prevent continued investigation into geographical knowledge preservation through linguistic systems. The recursive horror reveals itself when you realize that the systematic elimination of indigenous toponyms represents cultural genocide that transcended simple colonial displacement and extended into deliberate suppression of intellectual achievements that challenged European assumptions about geographical exploration priority. The toponym replacement programs eliminated evidence of sophisticated indigenous geographical knowledge while simultaneously destroying linguistic systems that preserved navigation information with accuracy that exceeded European cartographic capabilities. The most disturbing implication of systematic toponym suppression is its demonstration that linguistic systems can preserve comprehensive geographical knowledge across millennia without requiring technological infrastructure, that human language itself can function as distributed information systems that achieve precision exceeding technological mapping systems while remaining invisible to civilizations that equate intelligence with technological infrastructure. If indigenous communities preserved comprehensive continental geographical knowledge through linguistic systems that functioned as distributed coordinate networks, what other evidence of sophisticated indigenous intellectual achievements has been systematically eliminated through linguistic suppression programs designed to maintain European assumptions about unique technological superiority in geographical and mathematical knowledge? Section 14. The Chronometer Conspiracy of Temporal Displacement. You are confronting evidence that the most crucial navigation breakthrough, the marine chronometer that enabled precise longitude calculation, was developed centuries before its official invention, with systematic suppression of early precision timekeeping technology serving institutional interests that required navigation capabilities to appear progressively rather than cyclically developed, while comprehensive global exploration required systematic temporal displacement of technological achievements to preserve narratives of inevitable intellectual advancement rather than acknowledging cyclical patterns of knowledge, acquisition, and loss. The official narrative places marine chronometer development in the 18th century with John Harrison's innovative clock designs that finally solved the longitude problem that had plagued maritime navigation for centuries. But systematic analysis of earlier navigation records reveals references to precision timekeeping devices that achieved chronometer accuracy centuries before Harrison's official breakthrough, suggesting that reliable longitude calculation technology existed but was systematically suppressed to serve institutional interests that required navigation progress to follow controlled development patterns. The systematic suppression of early chronometer technology reveals institutional control over the timing of navigation breakthroughs that transcended simple technological development and served geopolitical interests that required global exploration capabilities to remain limited until specific historical moments. Earlier precision timekeeping technology would have enabled comprehensive global exploration centuries before the official age of discovery, fundamentally altering patterns of colonial development, trade relationships, and cultural contact that shaped contemporary international systems. But the most disturbing aspect of chronometer conspiracy is not the suppression of early precision timekeeping technology. It is the systematic temporal displacement that required comprehensive manipulation of historical records to eliminate evidence of navigation capabilities that predated their officially sanctioned development. The chronometer conspiracy demonstrates institutional capacity to control technological development timelines through systematic manipulation of historical evidence, combined with selective preservation of technological knowledge. The recursive impossibility emerges when you examine the mathematical sophistication required for early chronometer development. Precision timekeeping devices require knowledge of metallurgy, mechanical engineering, and mathematical calculation that supposedly did not exist until the Industrial Revolution. Yet fragmentary evidence suggests that earlier civilizations possessed chronometer technology that achieved comparable accuracy through different technical approaches. Either early civilizations developed independent technological solutions to precision timekeeping problems, or they preserved knowledge systems that originated from advanced technological capabilities that have been systematically eliminated from historical records. The institutional maintenance of chronometer development narratives follows patterns that serve contemporary assumptions about progressive technological development rather than historical accuracy. Academic institutions systematically prevent investigation of evidence suggesting early precision timekeeping technology. Researchers who publish findings about pre-18th century chronometer capabilities experience professional marginalization, and access to historical records that might document early precision timekeeping remains restricted through classification systems that transcend normal academic archive policies. The systematic elimination of references to early precision timekeeping technology from historical records follows patterns that mirror other technological suppression programs. Documents that mention early chronometer capabilities have vanished from archives with suspicious consistency. Fragments of early navigation manuals that reference precision longitude calculation have been systematically removed from collections, and institutional archives contain evidence of systematic editing programs designed to eliminate references to navigation technologies that predate their officially sanctioned development periods. When you trace the institutional relationships between organizations that controlled early chronometer development and contemporary technology control systems, you discover continuity patterns that suggest systematic management of technological development timelines across centuries. Organizations that inherited control over precision timekeeping technology continue to operate classification systems that prevent recognition of technological capabilities that predate official development narratives, creating recursive loops where historical technological suppression serves contemporary institutional interests. The recursive trap reveals itself when you realize that the chronometer conspiracy demonstrates institutional capacity to control the timing of technological breakthroughs through systematic manipulation of historical evidence combined with selective preservation of technological knowledge. If precision timekeeping technology existed centuries before its official development, but was systematically suppressed until politically convenient moments, what other technological capabilities have been subject to controlled development timelines that serve institutional interests rather than scientific progress? The most terrifying implication of systematic chronometer suppression is its demonstration that technological development follows managed patterns rather than natural progression. That institutional authorities possess capabilities to control the timing of technological breakthroughs through systematic manipulation of historical evidence, combined with selective preservation of advanced knowledge systems that exceed publicly available technological understanding. If precision chronometer technology existed centuries before its official development, but was systematically suppressed to control global exploration capabilities until specific historical moments, what other evidence of advanced historical technological achievements has been subject to temporal displacement programs designed to maintain assumptions about progressive rather than cyclical technological development patterns? Section 15. The cipher maps of Renaissance espionage. You are decoding cartographic espionage that operated through systematic encryption of geographical knowledge, where Renaissance maps functioned as sophisticated intelligence documents that concealed military, economic, and territorial information within seemingly decorative cartographic elements, revealing that systematic geographical intelligence gathering transcended simple exploration and served coordinated espionage operations that manipulated international relations through controlled distribution of encoded geographical knowledge that shaped diplomatic relationships, trade agreements, and military strategies across Europe through carefully managed cartographic deception programs. The systematic analysis of Renaissance map symbolism reveals encryption systems that concealed comprehensive intelligence about military fortifications, resource deposits, population centers, and strategic territories within decorative cartographic elements that appeared ornamental to casual observers while functioning as sophisticated intelligence documents for operatives trained in cartographic decryption techniques. The precision of geographical intelligence encoded in Renaissance maps suggests systematic espionage networks that achieved comprehensive surveillance capabilities through coordinated cartographic operations. But the most disturbing aspect of Renaissance cartographic espionage is not the sophistication of encryption systems. It is the systematic institutional control over geographical knowledge that enabled manipulation of international relations through selective distribution of accurate versus deliberately misleading cartographic intelligence. Renaissance authorities possessed accurate geographical knowledge while simultaneously distributing false maps designed to serve specific diplomatic and military objectives, creating recursive loops where geographical truth served institutional power interests rather than scientific accuracy. The technological sophistication of Renaissance cryptographic systems challenges assumptions about pre-modern intelligence capabilities. Renaissance cartographers employed mathematical encryption techniques that required sophisticated understanding of coordinate geometry, systematic knowledge of optical illusion principles, and advanced comprehension of psychological perception patterns that suggests access to intelligence training resources that exceeded publicly available educational systems. Either Renaissance intelligence operations developed independent advanced encryption capabilities, or they preserved knowledge systems from earlier civilizations with sophisticated intelligence technologies. The institutional resistance to research into Renaissance cartographic espionage follows patterns that suggest ongoing classification of historical intelligence operations. Academic institutions systematically prevent detailed investigation of encryption systems embedded in Renaissance maps. Researchers who publish findings about cartographic intelligence operations experience professional marginalization, and access to complete collections of Renaissance intelligence maps remains restricted through classification systems that transcend normal historical archive policies. The survival of encrypted Renaissance maps, while corresponding decryption documentation has been systematically classified, follows patterns that mirror contemporary intelligence agency document control systems. Renaissance cartographic intelligence operations preserved evidence of sophisticated geographical espionage, while systematically restricting access to documentation that would explain the institutional objectives served by systematic geographical knowledge manipulation, creating recursive puzzles where evidence of intelligence operations exists without explanatory framework. The systematic European implementation of cartographic deception programs reveals coordination that suggests centralized intelligence control rather than dispersed diplomatic activities. Renaissance authorities simultaneously distributed false geographical information to rival powers while preserving accurate maps for internal strategic planning, creating systematic misinformation campaigns that shaped international relations through controlled manipulation of geographical knowledge that served specific geopolitical objectives rather than scientific understanding. When you examine the institutional relationships between Renaissance cartographic intelligence operations and contemporary geographical knowledge control systems, you discover continuity patterns that suggest systematic preservation of geographical intelligence manipulation capabilities across centuries. Organizations that inherited Renaissance geographical archives continue to operate classification systems that prevent recognition of historical geographical knowledge manipulation, creating institutional frameworks that continue to serve contemporary intelligence objectives through controlled distribution of geographical information. The recursive horror emerges when you realize that the systematic Renaissance manipulation of geographical knowledge established precedents for controlling geographical information to serve institutional interests that continue to operate through contemporary cartographic systems. Renaissance cartographic espionage demonstrated that comprehensive geographical knowledge could be systematically manipulated to serve political objectives while maintaining public facades of scientific accuracy, creating institutional frameworks that transcend historical periods and continue to influence contemporary geographical understanding. The most terrifying implication of Renaissance cartographic espionage is its demonstration that geographical knowledge has never served purely scientific purposes. that systematic geographical intelligence represents the foundation of institutional power systems that transcend individual governments and operate through coordinated manipulation of spatial understanding across centuries. If Renaissance authorities could systematically control international relations through selective distribution of geographical intelligence, while preserving accurate geographical knowledge for internal strategic use, what other evidence suggests that contemporary geographical systems continue to serve intelligence objectives that transcend public educational purposes and shape geopolitical relationships through systematic manipulation of spatial information? Section 16. The Antarctic Anomaly of Pre-Ice Cartography. You are examining cartographic evidence that challenges the fundamental timeline of polar geography. Maps created centuries before official Antarctic exploration that depict the continent's coastline with accuracy that should be impossible, showing geographical features that correspond to sub-ice topography that contemporary science insists has been frozen for millions of years, yet presented with coordinate precision that suggests systematic surveying of ice-free Antarctic territories conducted by unknown civilizations that possessed global navigation capabilities during periods when the continent supposedly remained inaccessible beneath permanent ice sheets. The Piri-Reis map of 1513 shows Antarctic coastal features with mathematical precision that corresponds to contemporary sub-ice geological surveys, depicting mountain ranges that align with modern seismic mapping, river systems that match underwater drainage patterns, and coastal indentations that correlate with topographical structures that lie beneath thousands of feet of ice. The accuracy extends beyond general geographical knowledge to include specific coordinate relationship between Antarctic geographical features and other continental landmarks that suggest systematic global surveying programs rather than speculative cartographic imagination. But the most disturbing impossibility of pre-ice Antarctic cartography is not simply the accuracy of geographical detail, it is the temporal displacement that requires either systematic Antarctic exploration during ice-free periods that contradict geological timelines, or access to surveying technology capable of penetrating ice sheets to map underlying topography using methods that exceed contemporary scientific capabilities. Either unknown civilizations possessed global exploration capabilities during periods of favorable Antarctic climate, or they developed surveying technology that achieved precision impossible with conventional exploration methods. The systematic suppression of research into pre-ice Antarctic cartography follows patterns that suggest institutional recognition that accurate historical Antarctic maps threaten fundamental assumptions about both geographical development and technological capabilities. Academic institutions prevent detailed analysis of coordinate precision in historical Antarctic depictions. Researchers who investigate correlations between pre-exploration maps and contemporary sub-ice surveys experience professional marginalization, and access to complete collections of historical Antarctic cartography remains restricted through classification systems that transcend normal academic archive policies. The recursive impossibility deepens when you examine the systematic accuracy of Antarctic geographical knowledge that appears across multiple historical sources from different civilizations. Medieval Islamic geographers, Renaissance European cartographers, and ancient Chinese navigational texts all contain references to southern continental territories that align with actual Antarctic geographical features, suggesting either coordinated global exploration programs that achieved comprehensive Antarctic knowledge, or preservation of geographical information from earlier civilizations that possessed systematic global surveying capabilities during ice-free periods. The institutional resistance to acknowledging pre-ice Antarctic exploration serves contemporary psychological needs that require geographical discovery to follow progressive patterns where modern civilization appears to achieve unprecedented exploration capabilities. Acknowledging that earlier civilizations possessed accurate Antarctic geographical knowledge would challenge assumptions about unique modern polar exploration achievements and suggest that comprehensive global geographical understanding has existed and disappeared in cyclical patterns that contradict linear technological progress narratives. The survival of accurate Antarctic cartography, while corresponding exploration accounts have vanished, follows the same pattern of selective preservation that appears in other geographical anomalies. Historical Antarctic maps survive as museum curiosities, while documentation that would explain their impossible accuracy has disappeared from archives, creating recursive puzzles where evidence of advanced geographical knowledge exists without explanatory framework. When you trace the institutional control over historical Antarctic cartographic collections, you discover systematic patterns of access restriction that suggest ongoing classification of geographical intelligence rather than simple historical preservation. Organizations that control pre-exploration Antarctic maps operate classification systems that prevent detailed analytical research, while simultaneously funding contemporary Antarctic exploration programs that systematically avoid investigating correlations between historical cartography and modern geographical discoveries. The recursive trap closes when you realize that dismissing pre-ice Antarctic cartography as speculative imagination rather than systematic geographical knowledge serves institutional interests that require modern polar exploration to appear pioneering rather than derivative. The systematic academic denial of historical Antarctic accuracy preserves contemporary assumptions about unique technological achievements, while avoiding confrontation with evidence that comprehensive global exploration capabilities have existed across historical periods that exceed officially acknowledged technological development timelines. If unknown civilizations possessed systematic Antarctic geographical knowledge during ice-free periods, or developed surveying technology capable of mapping sub-ice topography with precision that exceeds contemporary capabilities, what other evidence of advanced historical global exploration has been systematically suppressed to maintain assumptions about unique modern geographical and technological achievements? Section 17. The frequency resonance of ley line navigation. You are discovering that ancient navigation systems operated through geological frequency resonance rather than conventional directional guidance. Systematic analysis of prehistoric route networks reveals mathematical relationships that correspond to planetary magnetic field variations, underground water system patterns, and geological structural alignments that suggest ancient civilizations navigated through electromagnetic sensing capabilities that transcended visual landmark systems and enabled precise long-distance travel through direct interaction with planetary energy systems that remain unacknowledged by contemporary navigation science. The systematic alignment of ancient roadways, sacred sites, and settlement patterns across continents reveals mathematical precision that corresponds to planetary electromagnetic field variations with accuracy that suggests direct sensing of geological energy systems rather than casual geographical observation. The Nazca lines, British ley lines, Chinese feng shui alignments, and Aboriginal song lines all demonstrate coordinate relationships that align with magnetic field declination patterns, geological fault systems, and underground water networks that suggest systematic navigation through electromagnetic resonance detection rather than conventional geographical wayfinding. But the most disturbing aspect of frequency resonance navigation is not simply the electromagnetic precision of ancient route systems. It is the systematic suppression of research into bioelectromagnetic human navigation capabilities that suggests contemporary science deliberately avoids acknowledging sensory systems that enabled direct interaction with planetary energy fields. Academic institutions prevent investigation of human electromagnetic sensing capabilities. Researchers who publish findings about bioelectric navigation experience professional marginalization, and classification of military navigation research suggests institutional recognition that electromagnetic sensing capabilities exceed publicly acknowledged human sensory limitations. The technological implications of frequency resonance navigation challenge fundamental assumptions about ancient capabilities versus modern achievements. If ancient civilizations navigated through direct electromagnetic sensing rather than technological instrument systems, they possessed biological capabilities that exceed contemporary human performance, while operating through sensory systems that have been systematically suppressed or eliminated through cultural development patterns that prioritized technological rather than biological navigation enhancement. The systematic academic dismissal of electromagnetic navigation research follows patterns that serve contemporary institutional interests, requiring human capabilities to appear limited to conventional sensory systems, rather than acknowledging bioelectromagnetic sensing that would enable direct environmental interaction without technological mediation. The suppression preserves technological dependency systems that require external instruments for navigation precision while avoiding recognition that human biological systems possess inherent capabilities that exceed technological replacement systems. The recursive impossibility emerges when you examine the mathematical precision of ancient electromagnetic navigation systems compared to contemporary technological accuracy. Ancient route networks demonstrate coordinate relationships that achieve precision exceeding GPS systems while operating through biological sensing capabilities that require no external technological support, suggesting that human electromagnetic sensing represents superior navigation technology that has been systematically suppressed through cultural development programs that prioritize technological dependency over biological capability enhancement. The institutional resistance to bioelectromagnetic navigation research reveals systematic patterns of scientific suppression that transcend simple academic skepticism and suggest recognition that human electromagnetic sensing capabilities threaten technological control systems that require human dependency on external navigation instruments. Organizations that control navigation technology development systematically prevent research into biological navigation enhancement, while simultaneously funding technological systems that replace rather than enhance human sensing capabilities. When you trace the careers of researchers who have investigated human electromagnetic sensing capabilities, you discover professional trajectories that suggest institutional control rather than scientific evaluation. Scientists who have published research demonstrating bioelectromagnetic navigation capabilities either experience career marginalization, focus subsequent research on less sensitive topics, or suffer personal difficulties that prevent continued investigation into human sensing systems that exceed officially acknowledged limitations. The recursive horror reveals itself when you realize that the systematic suppression of bioelectromagnetic navigation research serves technological control systems that benefit from human dependency on external instruments, rather than enhancement of biological sensing capabilities. The institutional prevention of electromagnetic sensing research preserves technological market systems, while systematically eliminating human capabilities that would enable direct environmental interaction without technological mediation. The most terrifying implication of frequency resonance navigation suppression is its demonstration that human biological capabilities have been systematically reduced through cultural programming designed to eliminate sensing systems that would enable direct planetary interaction, while creating dependency on technological systems that require external control and maintenance, rather than enhancing inherent human electromagnetic sensing potential. If ancient civilizations navigated through bioelectromagnetic sensing capabilities that achieved precision exceeding contemporary technological systems, what other evidence of advanced human biological capabilities has been systematically suppressed through cultural programming designed to create technological dependency while eliminating recognition of inherent human sensing systems that exceed contemporary performance limitations? Section 18. The Memory Palace Cartography of Neural Mapping. You are uncovering the most sophisticated information storage system ever developed. Ancient memory palace techniques that functioned as three-dimensional cognitive maps capable of preserving comprehensive geographical knowledge with precision that exceeds digital storage systems, revealing that human memory capabilities have been systematically reduced through cultural programming designed to eliminate cognitive mapping systems that enabled precise information preservation across generations without requiring external technological support, while demonstrating that ancient civilizations possessed cognitive enhancement techniques that achieved information storage density impossible with contemporary technological systems. The systematic analysis of memory palace construction techniques reveals cognitive mapping capabilities that transcend contemporary understanding of human information processing limitations. Ancient Greek mnemonists could preserve complete geographical surveys in cognitive structures that maintained coordinate precision across decades. Roman orators demonstrated information recall that exceeded modern digital accuracy, and medieval scholars preserved entire libraries within cognitive systems that functioned as searchable databases operated through purely mental processes rather than external technological infrastructure. But the most disturbing aspect of memory palace suppression is not simply the elimination of advanced cognitive techniques, it is the systematic cultural programming that convinced contemporary humans that external technological systems represent superior information storage compared to enhanced biological memory capabilities that achieve greater precision, reliability, and accessibility than digital alternatives while operating through cognitive enhancement rather than technological dependency. The institutional resistance to memory palace research follows patterns that serve technological market systems, requiring human dependency on external information storage rather than cognitive enhancement that would eliminate technological intermediation. Academic institutions prevent comprehensive investigation of advanced memory techniques. Researchers who demonstrate superior cognitive mapping capabilities experience professional marginalization, and access to complete ancient memory enhancement systems remains restricted through classification programs that prevent recognition of cognitive capabilities that exceed contemporary technological performance. The recursive impossibility emerges when you examine the information storage density achieved through advanced memory palace systems compared to contemporary digital capabilities. Ancient practitioners could preserve geographical surveys, astronomical calculations, and comprehensive cultural knowledge within cognitive structures that maintained accuracy across lifetimes while operating through biological systems that require no external power, technological maintenance, or infrastructure support, demonstrating information storage capabilities that exceed modern technological alternatives through purely cognitive enhancement. The systematic elimination of memory palace education from contemporary cultural systems reveals programming designed to eliminate cognitive capabilities that would threaten technological dependency systems. Educational institutions systematically avoid teaching advanced memory enhancement, while simultaneously promoting technological systems that replace rather than augment human cognitive capabilities, creating cultural dependency on external information storage that eliminates recognition of superior biological alternatives. The survival of fragmentary memory palace techniques in isolated cultural contexts provides evidence of comprehensive cognitive mapping systems that achieved information preservation across centuries without technological support. Tibetan monks preserve complete philosophical systems through memory palace structures. Aboriginal communities maintain geographical knowledge through cognitive mapping that exceeds cartographic accuracy. And traditional Islamic scholars demonstrate Quranic preservation through memory systems that achieve precision impossible with technological alternatives. When you trace the institutional suppression of cognitive enhancement research, you discover systematic patterns that suggest recognition that advanced memory capabilities threaten technological control systems. Organizations that benefit from human technological dependency systematically prevent research into cognitive enhancement, while simultaneously funding technological development that replaces rather than augments human biological capabilities, creating markets that require ongoing technological consumption rather than cognitive self-sufficiency. The recursive trap reveals itself when you realize that contemporary humans have been programmed to believe that technological information systems represent advancement rather than degradation of human cognitive capabilities that originally exceeded contemporary technological performance through biological enhancement rather than external technological replacement. The systematic elimination of memory palace education creates technological dependency while eliminating recognition that human cognitive systems possess inherent capabilities superior to digital alternatives. The most terrifying implication of memory palace suppression is its demonstration that human cognitive capabilities have been systematically reduced through cultural programming designed to eliminate information storage systems that would enable intellectual independence while creating technological dependency that requires external control and generates ongoing economic consumption rather than enhancing inherent human cognitive potential to levels that exceed contemporary technological limitations. If ancient civilizations developed memory palace systems that achieved information storage density and precision exceeding contemporary digital technology while operating through cognitive enhancement rather than technological dependency, what other evidence of advanced human biological capabilities has been systematically eliminated through cultural programming designed to create technological dependency while suppressing recognition of superior biological alternatives to contemporary technological systems? Section 19. The temporal distortion of simultaneous discovery. You are confronting the most disturbing pattern in cartographic history, the systematic occurrence of identical geographical discoveries across different continents at precisely synchronized moments, suggesting that global exploration operated through coordinated rather than independent discovery programs, with systematic suppression of evidence indicating that major geographical revelations followed managed timing patterns rather than coincidental exploration, revealing institutional control over the pace of global geographical knowledge that transcended individual exploration efforts and served coordinated objectives that required specific geographical information to become available at predetermined historical moments, rather than through natural exploration progression. The systematic analysis of geographical discovery timing reveals patterns that contradict assumptions about independent exploration programs. The simultaneous European discovery of American territories, the coordinated European exploration of African coastlines, and the synchronized European penetration of Asian trade routes all demonstrate temporal coordination that suggests centralized control rather than independent exploration initiatives. The precision of discovery timing transcends coincidental coordination and indicates systematic institutional management of global exploration programs. But the most disturbing aspect of simultaneous discovery patterns is not simply the coordination of exploration timing. It is the systematic suppression of evidence that geographical knowledge existed before official discovery periods, with systematic elimination of pre-discovery maps, indigenous accounts of prior contact, and historical records that document earlier exploration by non-European civilizations. The temporal distortion operates through systematic revision of discovery timelines combined with suppression of evidence that contradicts official exploration narratives. The institutional maintenance of synchronized discovery narratives follows patterns that serve contemporary geopolitical interests, requiring European civilization to appear historically dominant in global exploration while eliminating recognition that systematic global geographical knowledge predated European exploration programs by centuries or millennia. Academic institutions systematically prevent investigation of discovery timing patterns. Researchers who identify coordination in exploration programs experience professional marginalization and access to complete historical exploration. Records remains classified through systems that prevent analysis of systematic institutional control over geographical knowledge development. The recursive impossibility deepens when you examine the technological and logistical coordination required for simultaneous global exploration programs. The synchronized European exploration of multiple continents required systematic coordination of navigation technology, financing systems, personnel training, and strategic planning that exceeded the organizational capabilities of individual European nations, while suggesting institutional coordination that transcended national boundaries and served objectives that exceeded simple territorial acquisition or economic development. The systematic elimination of pre-discovery geographical evidence follows patterns that mirror other historical manipulation programs designed to support specific political narratives rather than historical accuracy. Documents that reference prior geographical knowledge have vanished from archives with temporal patterns that correspond to official discovery periods. Indigenous accounts of earlier contact have been systematically excluded from historical records, and institutional archives contain evidence of systematic editing programs designed to eliminate references to geographical knowledge that predates official European exploration. The survival of synchronized discovery narratives, while evidence of institutional coordination has been systematically classified, follows the same pattern of selective preservation that appears in other institutional manipulation programs. Official exploration accounts preserve narratives of independent discovery, while documentation that would reveal systematic coordination has been removed from public access, creating recursive puzzles where evidence of managed exploration exists without explanatory framework. When you trace the institutional relationships between organizations that controlled historical exploration programs and contemporary geographical knowledge management systems, you discover continuity patterns that suggest systematic preservation of geographical intelligence control capabilities across centuries. Organizations that inherited control over historical exploration archives continue to operate classification systems that prevent recognition of coordinated exploration programs while maintaining contemporary geographical intelligence operations that serve similar institutional objectives through systematic management of spatial information. The recursive horror emerges when you realize that the systematic coordination of geographical discovery demonstrates institutional capacity to control the timing of human knowledge development through systematic manipulation of information access, combined with coordinated management of exploration programs that serve specific geopolitical objectives, rather than natural human curiosity or scientific advancement. The most terrifying implication of temporal distortion in geographical discovery is its demonstration that human intellectual development follows managed patterns rather than natural progression. that institutional authorities possess capabilities to control the timing of knowledge acquisition through systematic coordination of information revelation, combined with suppression of evidence that contradicts managed development timelines designed to serve specific institutional interests rather than human intellectual advancement. If major geographical discoveries followed systematic timing coordination that required institutional control over global exploration programs, while simultaneously suppressing evidence of earlier geographical knowledge that contradicted official discovery narratives, what other evidence suggests that human knowledge development operates through managed patterns designed to serve institutional interests, rather than natural intellectual progression toward comprehensive understanding of spatial and temporal reality? Section 20. The Convergence Protocol of Cartographic Completion. You are reaching the ultimate revelation. Every anomalous map, every suppressed exploration account, every systematically eliminated geographical discovery represents components of a comprehensive global knowledge system that has been deliberately fragmented and distributed across time periods to prevent recognition that human civilizations have repeatedly achieved complete global geographical understanding, only to have systematic institutional programs eliminate evidence of comprehensive spatial knowledge through coordinated historical manipulation designed to maintain cyclical patterns of knowledge, acquisition, and suppression that serve objectives transcending individual civilizations and operating across temporal scales that exceed normal historical analysis. The systematic convergence of all cartographic anomalies reveals a coordinated institutional program that operates across centuries to maintain human geographical knowledge within controlled limitations. The Piri race Antarctic accuracy, the Chinese treasure fleet suppression, the Aboriginal navigation sophistication, the Renaissance encryption systems, and every other geographical impossibility represents fragments of comprehensive global knowledge that has been systematically distributed across time periods to prevent recognition that complete spatial understanding has been achieved repeatedly throughout human history, only to be systematically fragmented through institutional programs that maintain perpetual geographical rediscovery cycles. But the most terrifying aspect of the Convergence Protocol is not simply the systematic control of geographical knowledge. It is the recognition that institutional authorities possess complete global spatial understanding while maintaining public educational systems that preserve geographical ignorance through systematic suppression of spatial knowledge that would enable recognition of comprehensive environmental capabilities that transcend conventional technological limitations and extend into direct interaction with planetary systems through enhanced human biological sensing capabilities. The institutional coordination required for systematic global geographical knowledge suppression reveals organizational capabilities that transcend individual governments, academic institutions, or economic systems, while suggesting coordinated objectives that serve purposes beyond conventional political or economic interests. The Convergence Protocol demonstrates institutional capacity to maintain comprehensive knowledge control across centuries through systematic coordination of historical manipulation, educational programming, and cultural conditioning that shapes human spatial understanding according to predetermined limitations, rather than natural intellectual development. The recursive impossibility reaches its ultimate expression when you realize that the systematic suppression of complete geographical knowledge serves objectives that require human civilizations to remain spatially limited, while institutional authorities preserve comprehensive global understanding through classification systems that prevent recognition of complete environmental knowledge that would enable direct planetary interaction without technological mediation or institutional control. The systematic fragmentation of comprehensive geographical knowledge across historical periods creates perpetual rediscovery cycles that maintain the illusion of geographical progress, while preventing recognition that complete spatial understanding represents a recurring human achievement that has been systematically eliminated through institutional programs designed to preserve technological dependency and institutional control, rather than enabling comprehensive environmental interaction through enhanced biological capabilities. The survival of fragmentary geographical evidence across multiple historical periods, while comprehensive knowledge systems have been systematically eliminated, follows patterns that suggest deliberate preservation of incomplete information designed to maintain the illusion of progressive geographical discovery, while preventing access to complete spatial understanding that would enable recognition of advanced human-environmental interaction capabilities that exceed contemporary technological alternatives. When you examine the ultimate implications of the Convergence Protocol, you discover that systematic geographical knowledge control represents the foundation of institutional power systems that operate through spatial limitation rather than technological enhancement. That comprehensive environmental understanding would eliminate human dependency on institutional mediation while enabling direct planetary interaction through biological capabilities that exceed technological alternatives and transcend conventional control mechanisms. The recursive horror reaches its ultimate expression when you realize that human beings possess inherent capabilities for comprehensive global spatial understanding through biological sensing systems that exceed technological alternatives. But systematic institutional programming has eliminated recognition of these capabilities while creating dependency on external systems that require institutional control, rather than enabling biological enhancement that would transcend conventional limitations and achieve direct environmental interaction through cognitive and sensory systems that operate independently of technological infrastructure. The most terrifying revelation of the Convergence Protocol is that it demonstrates systematic institutional control over human spatial understanding designed to maintain perpetual geographical limitation while preserving comprehensive environmental knowledge within classified systems that serve objectives transcending individual human interests and operating across temporal scales that exceed normal historical comprehension, revealing that the systematic suppression of complete geographical knowledge represents a fundamental component of institutional control systems that maintain human civilization within predetermined spatial and cognitive limitations, rather than enabling achievement of comprehensive environmental understanding through enhanced biological capabilities that would eliminate institutional dependency and enable direct planetary interaction through human systems that exceed contemporary technological performance. The Convergence Protocol reveals that every cartographic anomaly, every geographical impossibility, and every suppressed exploration account represents evidence that human civilizations possess recurring capabilities for comprehensive global spatial understanding that have been systematically eliminated through institutional programs designed to maintain cyclical patterns of knowledge, acquisition, and suppression, rather than enabling permanent achievement of complete environmental comprehension through biological enhancement that would transcend institutional control and achieve direct planetary interaction through cognitive systems that operate independently of technological infrastructure or external mediation.